Okay, so say you have a few snakes and you're thinking about getting into breeding some rats or mice. That's what this video is about. And first thing I'd like to talk about is equipment. So this is kind of the way I started with glass aquariums, and the best way to do it is just start with one male and a few females. And these critter cages work really well. And the way I set them up is I had a little hide, a little food bowl, little water container there, and then a wheel. Of course, they always love the wheel. And then on the top of the cage, what I would do is I'd use this, it's kind of like a carbon roll that goes over the top. It's like a carbon impregnated fiber. And that worked fantastic for cutting the smells to almost absolutely zero. The only problem with aquariums, there are advantages and there are some problems. I'd say probably the biggest advantage is it's pretty cheap, it's easy to get set up, it's fairly easy to clean, but the problem is you have a lot of different things to clean, whereas in a rack system you only have the tub. So this is a lot more difficult, I would say, to clean everything, but it's a really good option. One of the biggest disadvantages, I think, on the bigger aquariums is that they're really heavy and really bulky, and you really can't stack many all together. I had up to 20 aquariums before I finally went to a rack system, and it was, I'd say it was a lot of work trying to keep them all clean. And the other big problem I find is the food dish is pretty much wide open, and they would always soil the food, and you'd throw away a lot of food changing it out every day. But it's a good way to start if you're thinking about getting into the rodent breeding. So I actually pulled this out of my garage. This is like a flashback from the past, and I always said you could cut yourself pretty good if the glass breaks. Well, sure enough, I cut my hand. There's a little tiny chip on the corner, and I was picking it up, it slid, and it cut my hand open. I just couldn't believe it. But that's one of the disadvantages is if the glass breaks or if you drop it and it shatters, it can be pretty dangerous. So let me show you kind of where I graduated from here. I had these for about a year, and then I moved up to my rack system after a year. And let me show you that setup. So I actually started in these small tanks, and I actually graduated to these larger racks. And these racks are made by ARS, and they are fantastic. Let me tell you, they give you the freedom to get away from cleaning tanks all the time, and it's pretty much maintenance free. So in the back of the tub over here, you have all the food hoppers, and it's basically on every level there's a food hopper in the back, and you can get to it pretty easy. These are all on wheels, so they just slide out, and I go through quite a bit of food. You can kind of just move them around real easy and get to them, and they're real easy to fill. So basically, with all the rats that I have, I'm going through about 50 pounds of food per week. And basically what I do is I just drop them right in the hopper here. And I just use a scoop and pour it along. It takes me about, I'd say it only takes me not even 5 minutes to fill up all the food for all of them. And that'll last for a whole week. And then the water, so basically the water system on top, it's just a 5-gallon bucket, and then it has this little quick disconnect here, and it goes to tubing that goes to every single line. And then let's see if you can see it down there a little bit better. So basically there's a line that goes in the tub, and then there's a little nozzle that's designed for them to drink, and basically you can see that it basically gives them water on demand. So the one thing you really have to watch on these is that the nozzle doesn't leak. I actually had one time when I was cleaning tubs, and I accidentally, the only time I had a tub flood is when I changed the tub and I had this nozzle just kind of set up here, and it automatically activated, and I didn't catch it in time, and it filled the tub, and unfortunately they drowned in the tub. So you really have to watch those nozzles. And then last year they were kind of leaking a little bit here and there. So what I did is last year I just went through and replaced all the nozzles all at once. So that's basically the equipment side of it. I love these racks. They're really expensive, but they're well worth it, let me tell you. The only thing I do during the week for maintenance is just to top off the water, and that's it. And then if you notice on this one, I actually started, you can buy these individual with individual levels, just one level at a time or as many levels as you want. And I started with just these bottom 20 levels here. And then I decided after I had those I wanted something for my mice. And they actually didn't have a transition between these two levels, and I actually built this out of steel. And the paint doesn't quite match, but it works great. And actually I love it because it gives you a handle. You can move the whole rack with it, and it's really solid. So that is the equipment side of it. Okay, let's talk about production, supply, and demand. That's probably the most difficult part of breeding rats. So I have 50 snakes, and I go through about 50 rodents per month. And right now I'm in the breeding season, and my females, some of them have laid eggs, so they're starting to feed already. Some of them are getting ready to lay. Some of them are full of eggs, like this big albino. So she hasn't eaten. There's a lot, you can see I mark them off feed, and there's quite a few off feed. And the problem with snakes going off feed is now I'm producing and I don't have the snakes to eat the rats. And then I got this new hatchling rack, and here in a month or two, pretty soon I'll have baby snakes, and then I'll have another 50 or 100 mouths to feed. So the most difficult part is balancing the supply and demand. And what I was doing at first is just kind of random. I was just kind of all over the place. And I was basically, what I was doing is I was putting 6 females to a tub. This one has 4. So I was actually putting 6 to a tub, and then I was putting in the male, and then I was going through and checking on them all, which is kind of difficult because you kind of have to pull them out and look at them and see, well, is that one pregnant? You know, is this one pregnant? You kind of have to go through all of them. You see, she's getting a little fat. So then when they get almost ready to lay, I'd put them over here in these tubs. And I actually do have one that I moved over. So, and she just gave birth. And then what I'd do is I'd grow them out, and then when they got to a certain size, like this size, these guys I just moved all together. And they're close to the same size, not exactly. And that was working pretty good, but the problem I found, it was hard to keep track of which female was which age, and now that I've been doing it for a couple of years, all my females are getting old and they need to be retired. So basically I scrapped the whole system and I'm totally starting over with a new system. So let me show you my new system. Okay, so for my new system, I'm planning on producing 80 rats per week. And the way I'm doing it is I'm putting 4 breeder females in this tub, 4 breeder females in that tub for the first week. And then I put in male A and male B. So basically I have 8 females that should birth about the same time. And then I haven't quite gotten to that point yet, but it's going to take a while to get there, but in the next 2 tubs, I'm going to do the same thing. So for next week, I'll have 4 per tub with a male in each tub. And then the following week, so the 3rd week, I'll move the A and the B down to this tub and this tub. And I'll keep kind of leapfrogging the males through. So I'll only need 4 males and basically 4 females per tub. So actually, if you count all my tubs, I'll need 80 females to produce. And then I usually keep the top tub clean, one on the end. And that's so I can just move these over and then clean this tub and then move that one over and clean that tub just for cleaning. So those will be my main producers. And then my females will all basically have babies in the same tub. I won't remove them. And then over here in this rack, I've totally changed this over. So this isn't going to be my nursing rack. This is actually going to be my female replacement on the top. So what I did is I took the last batch of babies that I had, and I pulled 4 females per tub here, 4 here, so on and so forth. Ha! My guy's sleeping. Hello, wake up. So basically, for the first 7 tubs here, I have all my replacement females. And then, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to track when they were born, when I can breed them, and then when to retire them. So basically 4 months after they're born they can breed, and then when they're 12 months old their fertility starts going down. And then the rest on the bottom there, these are all marked as feeders. So a lot of these are really big males. Right now I had a lot of extra males that I didn't need, and they were just burning through the food. And I got some females that are really old. So once I get going, what I'm going to do, if I can actually get there, is basically once a month I'll replace 8 old females and then replace those with 8 new females. So that'll give me all new females in the whole rack once a year. It'll keep them all young, and it'll keep them all together in the same tub, and I also have no problem with them fighting, so that should eliminate my fighting. So now you're probably thinking, well, what do I do with all the old breeders that are left over? So I actually have a solution for that. Let me move this table. And what I did is I bought a couple big retics. So this is Lucy. She's one of my big, she's actually 50% dwarf, but she can eat the biggest jumbo rat that I have. And basically, she's my disposal for all my old rats. And you really need something like that, or you can sell them to a pet store. But usually the big rats don't sell very good at a pet store. So that's kind of my organization and what I'm thinking. So it'll probably take me about a year. Now that I just started this week, it'll probably take me a year to actually get to the point where I'm at the point where I'm changing everything out on a regular basis and get the whole system down to the regular production. So I do have, there's a few in here where I have, so yeah, I got some babies in some of these. This one's got a bunch of babies. And then the other thing I do to kind of organize things is I love these little magnetic strips, and then I just use a label maker, and I kind of have different codes. So right now, if they're about to have babies and they don't have babies, I just flip it. So these guys haven't had babies yet, and then once they have babies I'll flip it over. But eventually they'll all be, so my labels are all going to change, and eventually they're all going to be just 4 female breeders, and then the dates, when to start breeding and when to retire them on all the tubs. So that's all going to change. And then, so every month I'll have to retire 8 females, and then I'll have to pull 4 new females on a regular basis and mark all the dates. And that should give me a fresh supply of rooms. So let's talk about the economics of breeding. So it basically comes down to food costs and bedding costs. What I like to use for food is this Missouri 6F rodent breeder. And you have to be careful because this bag looks a lot like other foods, including alpaca food. So you want to check it before you get home, so you actually don't have alpaca food. And the other thing it comes down to is bedding. And if you look at the bedding here, here's my new males that I'm raising up. So if you look at bedding, I actually discovered this bedding here, and it's a kiln-dried pine. So actually pine is toxic to rats, and if you start using pine, you have to get kiln-dried in a low dust, and this is a screened kiln-dried pine, and I found it from a breeder down in Denver. It's actually a pet store that was breeding rodents. So I actually started, even for my mice, I do the same. I actually use just a little bit more so the babies can reach the top. But I started using all different kinds of bedding. So I can just show you some of my mice here. I keep these at a pretty low population in these tubs. So I think I have one up here that's, ooh, he's got a bunch of babies. But anyway, so I found cypress mulch works really well for bedding, but it's real expensive. Probably the cheapest bedding that I've found is shredded paper, and I have a paper shredder over here, and it works really well, especially this really fine shredded paper, something like this. And that's the best bedding. It's free, but the problem is trying to get enough bedding for all these tubs, and the time to shred it, it's quite a bit. So I'd say with cypress mulch, I was probably going through $200 worth of bedding per month for all these rats. With this new pine, I'm going through about $28, so it's a significant savings. With my shredded paper, it's free, but I just haven't been able to get that much paper. And then for a while I tried to shred newspaper, so I had some newspaper here, just regular old newspaper. And I found out newspaper is toxic to rodents. My mice were actually having some kind of a reaction to it. And I stopped using newspaper. So that's pretty much it for the bedding. For the mice, I do the mice a little bit different. So I realize that the male mice stink really bad, and I think I only keep one male mouse in the whole colony, just as kind of a backup. And then usually what I do is once they have babies, I pull all the males first, and then usually just keep one to breed back. So on this one, you can see, you can't really tell which is male and which is female at this point. But I just keep my mice for my some of my picky snakes. So I don't breed a whole lot of mice. I don't keep them too crowded. And then this little thing with the Monday through Sunday. So basically what I do is when I clean everything, I just put the date it was cleaned. So I know today is Monday. I actually cleaned everything today. So that's pretty much it for the mice. It's really wonderful. It takes me about maybe 3 hours to clean all the tubs once a week. Other than that, I just fill up the waters, just top them off every day. And then when my water starts going down really fast, I know I have too many rats, and then I usually call some of my friends in the pet store and figure out what my snakes need. But other than that, that's my rodent breeding setup. Thanks for watching.